So what sort of advice would I give people that are looking at starting out? Well, I think initially,
and it's obviously going to wean out those types of individuals, which again is obviously only going to improve the stock that you've got, and then obviously create opportunity for those that are doing it properly, which is obviously the way that things should be done.
I had a rent to HMO portfolio which allowed me to do that, and Richard was an A&E doctor and was doing locum shifts, so maybe 1 or 2 a week. It's great to be able to watch this and see an industry change in something that we're so involved in, because there's conversations that I'm having with people where I'm saying, they're looking at bringing this in back in the summer, autumn time. What are your thoughts on it? And they might have 6, 7, 8 rent-to-rents, and they look at me blankly and go, what are you talking about?
Yeah, that's the opportunist 18-year-old speaking there. It's
No, that's Warren Buffett speaking.
Before we kick this episode off, I want to let you know about our next show that will be taking place in Manchester on Wednesday, the 4th of September at Manchester City's stadium, the Etihad. Doors to the show will open from 10 a.m. to 3 p.m. We have 2 keynote stages, multiple exhibitors, and lots of opportunity for networking. Details to the show is in the description. Tickets are free. We hope to see you there. Welcome to episode 12 of the Property Developer Show, the podcast. Today, I'm joined by another good friend of mine, Dan Cheetham. Dan is a property investor, developer, rent-to-rent expert, service accommodation. The list is somewhat endless from an entrepreneurial property perspective. But welcome to the show today, Dan.
Thank you for having me on.
So for the people at home, we often start here on the podcast. For people at home who don't know Dan Cheetham, who is Dan?
So at the moment, I'm probably best known for our service accommodation management business that we've got, which sort of operates in the northwest of the UK. I started off in property when I was 17, I suppose. Started off as a joinery apprentice, moved into single-let management, then HMO management, and then 5 years ago discovered guests and started to build an SA management business, as well as buying a couple of buy-to-lets and SAs along the way.
Nice. And it's all in the sort of Stoke-on-Trent, Cheshire.
Yeah, so Staffordshire, Cheshire, Greater Manchester, and starting to branch out into other areas now as well.
Nice. And then you've got a couple of purchases going on at the moment as well.
That's right. Yeah, going a little bit further afield for those. So we've got stuff in Stoke and as far as Wakefield now as well.
Nice. Brilliant. So, I mean, for the listeners at home, obviously we've known each other really from like
Day
20,
dot.
Yeah, pretty much. When once kind of got a taste of this world of, social media and property and entrepreneurship. And I tell this story, and obviously you know it very well, that, the first time that I met you, I remember locally, there's not many people that are into business at such a young age, being 17, 18, 19, 20. And you kind of think, I'm alone in this world. And I remember very distinctly that we obviously met at a networking event. And, when you said, I'm 20 as well, or 19 or whatever it was at the time, I was like, oh my God, someone else exists that's a complete lunatic, just like me, and is into property and business. I think since then we've been very good friends and had some very good conversations, which hopefully we can talk about on this podcast today.
Yeah, I remember it well. It was great to meet somebody, like you say, at the same age, looking to do similar stuff. So it's been good to watch how we've grown as time's gone on since.
And the conversations have always been somewhat similar in a sense of the same headaches, the same problems, the same wins, the same, they're slightly different versions, but very similar in a way. So I think aiming this podcast episode really probably at young developers or people that are, of a younger generation. And I say younger, I say 18 to, I think 30 is still young to be starting in property, and probably 35 and onwards really. But I suppose aiming it at that type of audience, what have you learned, I suppose, from being 17-year-old little Dan who, thinks that he can conquer the world, and probably still think that now, to be fair. But, what lessons have you learned, particularly in the earlier days, that you sort of reflect through on your approach to business and property today?
No, I've had my reality checks that have knocked my perception into the right sort of frame of mind now. So don't sit here thinking I can conquer the world, but definitely did when I started out. So what sort of advice would I give people that are looking at starting out? Well, I think initially, when you are coming into business at a young age, there are obviously the select few that manage to go out and have huge success really early on. But I don't think you can put a price on experience, and whether that's employed experience or, business ownership experience. And I think when you are young and you are inexperienced, that is something that you're missing, and that's potentially where a lot of the headaches can stem from. So from my perspective, when I was 20, that's when I started working for myself. I'd only really had a very short time in employment, and that time in employment, I was very immature as well, and they weren't necessarily corporate jobs. So it was really starting a business, but starting working at the same time. So I didn't have the benefit that I see people that are older having, of just that maturity and that time on the planet to be able to get going. So for me, probably some of the biggest lessons that I've taken from my earlier years are around being a bit more clear on goal setting, not having a mindset of trying to do everything really quickly, and also trusting but verifying, which is something that a phrase that I'd taken from Dorian Payne, a friend of ours as well.
Brilliant. So I think the early days are really about the lessons, aren't they? And
for sure, yeah.
And the naivety that comes with that, because I think I've referred to this already in the podcast episode, but someone's been interviewed, very successful, and they say, you know, if you were to do business again, what would you do? And they say, well, I wouldn't do it because I'm not a lunatic and I know what's entailed. And I think when you're young, ambitious, and you really get that passion for wanting to do something with your life in property or business, for us, obviously that was the theme. I think you really, you go in with the blinkers on. You have no idea what it is entailed, but you're of this confidence and mindset that whatever is presented in front of me, I'm going to conquer.
Definitely. I think the naivety is a double-edged sword. So on the one hand, it brings all of the challenges and headaches of not having the experience. But on the other side of the coin, if you aren't naive, I suppose you wouldn't get going or wouldn't have the same hunger that you do start off with initially. So it's been a blessing and a curse for me at the start. But when I was always employed, I'd always had this, I suppose, arrogance, to be completely transparent, that when I looked at my employees, I thought, I've got to be able to do this better. Or, you know, I didn't appreciate the challenges that they had. And when you do start to get involved in business, you realize actually it's really tough. But for us, especially, there is no other option. There's nothing else that I'd be doing. And I prefer the challenges of this than the other hard challenges I could have of doing something different that isn't business.
Absolutely, absolutely. So, I mean, you were the same as me. You started with absolutely nothing. And, you know, you've got something decent to show for it now. Well, more than decent to show for it now. What was, I suppose, and you know what, this is a broad question, and I know there's a lot of moving parts to this, but what do you think was one of the key elements that's allowed you to go from naught to where you are now?
That is a tough question. I would probably say partnering the right people. So I recognize now that my skill sets are very strong in certain areas, but also very weak. I'm very one-dimensional in what I'm good at. And there's a lot of parts of business that I would really struggle with if I didn't have a partner. So having the right business partner that has opposing skill sets has been great. I know when we first started off, we talked about sort of our vision and our goals for the future, and we both wanted similar things, but we're equally the same person. So we'd bring very similar skill sets to the table. And I think that would be something that'd be difficult, you know, as we've discussed, to work with, because we've both got the same roles, same skill sets, same ideas. And I think picking people that have different ideas, different concepts, different strengths are the ones that you need to be surrounding yourself with if you want to go further, really. Now, you can do that through partnership. You can do it through employment. For me at the time, without having any resource, it made sense to partner, and that's been a great decision for me.
No, I agree massively with that. I would not be where I am with what I'm doing if I hadn't have partnered with people, key people, you know, that had the resources, the mindset, the skill set that I didn't have. And without that, you know, as they say, you know, you go, I can't think what the phrase is.
If you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together, or something like that.
That's one. Do you know what? It's so cliche. And we use a lot of these cliche terms on this podcast, but they're all relative. They're all true, that, you know, in some senses. And I think if you kind of understand that from an early, sort of early journey, kind of, I'm a bit naive, don't really know all the answers to everything. If you can bring two people of similar nature, in a sense of wanting to, you know, achieve, be ambitious, bring the skill sets that are completely polar opposite, bring them together, you only create something of value, for sure.
I think another phrase that's used is don't compare yourself to others. And actually, I slightly disagree with that. I spend a lot of my time comparing myself to other people, and I think it's actually great for me. And the benefit of doing that is it highlights that I'm quite shit at a lot of things. So I need to know who I need on my team that's really good at those things, so that we can get a really good whole picture of business, and things aren't missed and things aren't a struggle. So I spend a lot of my time doing things that I'm good at, which leaves me feeling a little bit vulnerable about the things that I'm not good at, because I don't spend any time working on those weaknesses really. But I think that's what's helped us to build a sensible and relatively systems and process oriented business. Because if it was me on my own, it would still be on the back of a crisp packet for sure.
Yeah. So that cameos quite nicely into your full-time business at the moment, which is obviously service accommodation management in a very simple term.
Yep.
And I know we've had conversations from how things from a growth perspective have potentially been interesting from your own perspective, going back to that naive 18-year-old Dan that was like, I'm going to conquer the world, to the realities of, I've got a business now, I've got responsibility.
Yeah.
And I think it'd be interesting to hear some of the growing pains that I suppose you felt over the last 2 years since starting the business. And I suppose, we can start quite nicely on that, some of the growing pains that you're sort of facing with the business.
So we started it back in 2019, and that was obviously off the back of a lot of the mistakes we've alluded to at the start of this episode. We moved really, really slowly at the start. So we only took on 2 rent-to-rents, very low barrier entry, allowed us to control it, test the model in the first year. After that first year, that's when we first started moving into management. So really been in management now for 4 years. And at each step of the way, you're learning something different. So my background was in single-let management, then HMO management. So when we took our first SA on, it was about learning how to manage our first SA, or at least do the rent-to-rent model on this and learn sort of guest profile. After that point, we then introduced the management layer, and then you're learning how to manage on behalf of clients. And that's very different to managing AST style properties, really. There's lots of different caveats, and you're working with a slightly different type of customer, and you need to be very clear on the expectations there. So then you move into a place where you've got a decent amount of units and you need to start looking at employing staff, and then you have to learn how to become an employer. So each step of the way, you are essentially a novice, which is great because it allows us to be creative, learning. There's lots of challenges that come with that, which is really good fun. But I think, in other episodes, you've discussed service-based businesses, bits about cash flow and staff and those sorts of things. And one of the things that I think we did really well was, for the first couple of years, took no money out of the business whatsoever. Really, really lived very cost effectively. I had a rent to HMO portfolio, which allowed me to do that. And Richard was an A&E doctor and was doing locum shifts, so maybe 1 or 2 a week. That allowed us to save up a decent bank of cash, which allowed us to take employees on very safely, very easily, and allowed us to not compromise on that service. But, when you take employees on, there's lots of fun that comes with that as well, as you know. So that's been really fun, from managing virtual assistants in the Philippines to office-based staff to staff that are out on the road. And the market is ever evolving. So I think if we started in 2019, when did COVID start? 2020?
2020 it was, yeah.
Yeah, straight into COVID, a couple of years of that, and then back out into a new landscape. And people are asking you, what's normal look like for service accommodation? Well, the industry is moving that rapidly. There is no normal. You're only picking a very small snapshot in time here in the last 5 years. The amount of supply has changed, the guest demographics changed, booking landscapes changed. So it's a constant new evolution, I suppose, and that's where some of the challenges come from too.
No, it makes sense. And I think, we've definitely had some guests on here and obviously talked about the whole employee piece and growing the business. And it is tough. And I think in a double-edged sword way, you need a good team to push the business forwards. But then equally with that comes the risk of, not having the right people, not having the right skill set, which obviously we've alluded to with finding that business partner early on that can help alleviate the skill sets that aren't quite there in the business. And I think it's a difficult piece to conquer, really, in a way. And I mean, we've had multiple conversations about the subject, and I think the one clear thing is that really it's understanding what skill set that employee brings, and whether they alleviate a problem that should in turn generate more capital, cash flow, Or is it that they're just there as a nicety because it's more people, it's, more bums on seats, or, that sort of thing, which I'm sure obviously you've sort of dealt with within your own business.
Yeah, for sure. And service accommodation is a really noisy business as well, with lots of moving parts. It's very operationally intense. So in terms of the guest journey, you've got the listing and marketing element, the check-in process. Once the guest is actually inside the property, you've also got to consider your linen, tea towels, all of that kind of stuff, and also the cleaning element. So we rely on a lot of subcontractors as well. So we probably have 11 different house cleaning teams, the linen suppliers, the internal team, obviously the guest management and the reviews process on the back end. And, we're selling like over 1,000 odd nights a month each month. So, those guests might only stay for a couple of nights a week. So you get a lot of people coming through the business, and there's a lot of moving parts to manage. And that's where some of the challenges of SA come in as well. I look back on the days of managing single lets where I'd simply tell somebody this is what your house will rent for. I'm going to take 10% and you'll get that as long as your tenant pays. It was a lot simpler.
Yeah. And that, do you know what, that's one part of the challenge with having a service accommodation business. But obviously, there's a lot of changes that are going on in the industry, which as a management agent, I'm sure you're on top of, if you want to delve into them a bit more. Yeah, definitely. So when we started back in 2019 doing service accommodation, there was only a fair few providers doing it. Obviously that's changed massively. The government have realised that this is a good income generator for landlords, and there's also been a lot of tax advantages such as no section 24, capital allowances, etc. Most people are on business rates and able to claim small business rates relief, which nullifies any sort of council tax liabilities. And the compliance element of short stays has been really lax as well. You can rent a treehouse, lifeboat, or a 4-bed house in Stoke on Airbnb. There's loads and loads of variation there. So what they're trying to do at the moment is enforce the compliance element, and we're looking at fire doors, interlinked smokes, emergency lighting, those sorts of things, and fire risk assessments. But also they're looking at changing it from a bigger picture, which is that they're introducing C5, which is a new planning class for short stays. And the government's apparent motivation for doing that is about keeping a control on the level of stock. So Stoke Council had posted that there's over 400 Airbnbs in Stoke alone. Now, I don't know whether that's true or not, but if you look at areas like Cornwall, where the locals are pretty irate at second homeowners, really this is just about making sure that the government is seen to be doing their best to meet the housing criteria for new homes and making sure people have got properties for long-term tenancies or home ownership. So this is changing the landscape, and what I think a lot of people are walking into a little bit blindly is potentially some of the headaches that this might present. So especially those on rent-to-rents and those with potentially incorrect mortgage policies as well, or products, sorry. So we're not entirely sure what these changes are yet. They've not been particularly clear. What they have said, though, is that if you're an established operator, you'll be able to continue operating and you won't have to go through full planning. Now, the definition of established is yet to be known. Is that you're on business rates? Is that you have the correct mortgage product? Is that you've been open for a certain amount of days or trading for a certain amount of time? There's no guidance around that at this moment in time. So they've also said that you could potentially move through the planning classes through permitted development, but there's lots of noise about this at the moment, and I see a lot of challenges for people that are in the management sector or in the rent-to-rent sector, but that also will bring a lot of opportunities too, as any challenge always does, or regulation change. So people that have been operating their serviced homes correctly and compliantly, I think there's going to be a huge contraction in the market, and potentially one of up to about 50%. So for us, we averaged about 80% occupancy last year. We can't really push that any higher because of seasonality and also your orphan nights in between guest stays. So really the biggest change I think we'll see is the average daily rate, or the nightly price that we charge to guests, is going to really start to significantly increase. And that'll especially be true for your 3, 4, 5 beds that don't compete with hotels. So we're probably going to be back into the days of like 2019, 2020, when we were making really good money out of our properties compared to where we are now, where compared to AST rents, it's a little bit slimmer. Let me just pause this episode for a moment to quickly introduce you to our episode sponsor, the Property Finance Collective. Transforming visions into reality requires not just a great idea, but the right financial support and the best possible team around you. Specialising in development finance, bridging finance and commercial mortgages, the Property Finance Collective are there to help you navigate complex markets to secure the funding you need, as well as being part of your team that you can rely on. With a flair for creative deal structuring, they tailor solutions that fit precisely with your project's demands, ensuring speed, efficiency and flexibility. They want to help you make the impossible possible. Now let's get back to the episode. Yeah, it's an interesting discussion because I think it's happened to buy-to-lets, happened to HMOs, where, you know, the compliance side of things, as well as the governing, as well as, you know, the planning gains, you know, all these moving parts. I think, it's either the government, like you say, have gone, right, well, we can make some money here because these landlords are making money and we ain't profiting from them just yet. The council have gone, holy crap, everyone's moved to business rates and moved away from council tax, which is affecting things. The general population is going, well, we've got a housing crisis anyway. You know, we are, I think, about 4.5 million houses short in the UK. That does include, obviously, rental properties and residential. We need 4.5 million on top of that. It's not that we can just, you know, move SAs out and then the housing crisis is sorted, but obviously it all helps in the same direction. And I think there does need to be some level of governing, so to speak, because it's vital to, you know, keeping the industry legitimate in a way of, you know, legitimate 100%. Landlords, not having, you know, dodgy people with Airbnb listings that, you know, don't know fire risk assessments, health and safety. They haven't got the right, you know, fire doors or fire alarms or whatever it might be. Yeah. It eradicates that issue within the industry. And, you know, obviously it still goes on, but it's easier to, I suppose, wean out, particularly with Airbnb controlling a lot of that kind of, you know, apart from the direct bookings, but controlling a lot of the sort of industry around that piece. They can certainly regulate it via Airbnb, which obviously is a benefit to the industry in a way, and Booking.com, obviously. So it's interesting how, in a way, I kind of got into HMO, working in HMOs before it was like started to become regulated, and I saw it kind of become regulated, and mortgages, you know, I know 5-6 years ago were quite difficult to get on HMOs, whereas now, you know, it's a piece of piss, basically. You know, there's so many lenders that are doing it now. It's the same sort of happening with service accommodation. You know, 2 years ago, there was probably, you know, a select few lenders that would actually look at or have a product available, and their criteria was just utterly ridiculous because you need 12 months experience. But how do you get 12 months experience if you haven't? Yeah,
if you can't get lending on it.
Exactly. Absolutely. So there's all these sort of evolutions that, you know, happen with the HMO market. It's now happening with the service accommodation market. It's also happening with social housing as well. That seems to be sort of probably a lagging behind where service accommodation is, but it'll certainly
catch up for sure.
Yeah. And I think people that are on the forefront of that, you know, like yourself, that are keeping up to date with regulation, are making sure that all the units that you've got are compliant in some way. You're advising customers, obviously looking at your own stock to do that. I think that's where it helps businesses that are doing a good job really maximize the industry.
It's great to be able to watch this and see an industry change in something that we're so involved in, because there's conversations that I'm having with people where I'm saying, you know, they're looking at bringing this in back end of summer, autumn time. What are your thoughts on it? And they might have 6, 7, 8 rent-to-rents, and they look at me blankly and go, what are you talking about? And equally, we've had some clients that have read some of the headlines and have really panicked. And we've also had some of our really experienced clients and other professionals in the industry that haven't yet touched service accommodation going, now's the time that I want to get involved in it because it's becoming more difficult. So I think this is a really good real life current example of me as to some of the changes that have happened with buy-to-lets, where people look to exiting because of Section 24. HMOs look at exiting that because of compliance that's been brought in, whether it be Article 4 or anything else. The same is happening again now with short stays. And it's great to see that, because for me, it's taking the lessons that you've seen with the other strategies and trying to implement them into your business so that you can have that edge and be ahead, and make sure that we can advise all of our clients and everybody else on what the best decisions are. And for me, I'm more bullish on service accommodation now than I have been over the last couple of years. If this becomes a more difficult strategy and the barrier to entry is harder, great. That's really, really where I want to be.
No, it makes sense. And I think, that's the opportunist 18-year-old speaking there. It's
no, that's Warren Buffett speaking. Be greedy when others are fearful, and fearful when others are greedy.
I couldn't agree more. No, I'm only taking the piss. But it all makes sense. I think from sort of an opportunity perspective, there is huge opportunity. In change comes opportunity, and do you know what? That is a really good phrase actually that goes in quite nicely with the whole piece. Is that, and I think there's certainly been times over the last since COVID happened, there's been times when people have been greedy, and there's been times where there's people that have been fearful, and the opportunities that have been there for those that kind of operate in the right way and understand what is actually going on the underlying issues, not just what's happening on the the headlines and what the BBC say, or often because they talk out their arse anyway, but particularly in the property market sector, but it's understanding what is under those layers and where is the opportunity, and obviously being in the position you are, you obviously seeing those opportunities. When
it first came out, I did have a small panic, and it's just very quickly looking back at, principles of don't panic, get educated on what's going to happen, and look at how we can adapt and overcome from this. And there's lots of different opportunities that I see. I think for anybody in SA, they are going to have costs that they need to go through in order to get their properties ready for this. There's going to be change that they need to implement, but there's going to be so many people that just think, sod this, I'll go back to buy to let, because actually the difference between doing it at the moment isn't that significant. It certainly can be, but for the majority of people that are doing this, that haven't got access to the corporate booking agents or some of the insurance bookings, longer term bookings, whatever it might well be, just go back to buy to let. It's so much easier at the moment, and that's where this great opportunity is going to come over the next couple of years for sure.
Definitely, and those operating not so well, and those ones that, and I'm not discrediting people that are just starting out, but those that start out and then don't improve what they've got, they're just doing it for the cash flow and they're doing it for the profit, and it's obviously going to wean out those types of individuals, which again is obviously only going to improve the stock that you've got, and then obviously create opportunity for those that are doing it properly, which is obviously the way that things should be done, really, in theory. So in terms of moving forwards then, I suppose, without using a crystal ball, because if we did have one, then this podcast would be very different. What do you foresee over the next 2 to 3 years then? Because I know you've alluded to the opportunities. What sort of opportunities do you see evolving over the next sort of 2 to 3 years?
So I'm paying a little bit of attention to what's happened in Scotland recently, because they, a couple of years ago, brought in similar changes. And again, it's trying to get very clear on what those changes are at the moment. So will your lending product become a factor? Will business rates become a factor for those that are looking to be established? How do we ensure that we are accurate with our compliance? There's lots of different opinions on what that compliance looks like and what you can and can't do. So for me, it's making sure that we are insanely well informed, and that all of our clients are as well, and that we can kind of become a bit of an authority figure on that subject. Make sure that we're providing that advice to the people in our sort of circle, and then leveraging that sort of knowledge as to what we go and do. So for me at the moment, I will be quite bullish on looking to purchase SAs, making sure they're compliant. And then I think with this contraction in supply, and like I say, depending on how difficult the regulations are, I could see it being anywhere in the region of 50%. There's so many people doing this incorrectly now as it stands. If this is enforced accurately, then I think we're going to have a massive contraction, and I think that's where we'll do very well out of it. In terms of the demand, yes, supply has increased, but if we're still averaging sort of 80% occupancy and people are still booking, it shows that there's a need for this type of accommodation, whether it be the contract or leisure market, or the sort of different niches within those. And it's really just capitalising on a lack of stock available, making sure that our properties are incredibly attractive for people to go and book, and therefore enjoying the revenue that will come off the back of that. And I think with a harder barrier to entry, there will be opportunities for people to become advisors in that space to help people get involved in it. It's not just a case of buying a rent-to-rent off a sourcer that's got the incorrect lease on an apartment in Manchester, the wrong mortgage, no compliance at all, and winging it. Hopefully those days will be gone. And that's where we'll be able to offer a service to people to help them do this properly.
There's a lot of moving parts to it, isn't it? And I think as well, like obviously a lot of Article 4 areas exist because of HMO, but how is that going to then impact obviously people that want to do potentially service accommodation within that area? Assuming that Article 4 was there for the HMOs, but then obviously now the council they're in a position, if they obviously make that planning change, whereas if you're in an Article 4 area, if you've got a C3 property, I can operate that as a service accommodation. There's no regulation around that. It'd be interesting as well to see how that potentially affects the existing control of what people can do with those properties.
Yeah, there's got to be some slight variation on Article 4, because Article 4 is bred really out of a locality issue, isn't it, really? People want to invest heavily in that area because of employment, universities, hospitals, whatever it might well be, that underpin those HMOs. Whereas with serviced accommodation, you don't tend to get, apart from blocks, I suppose, a huge amount of saturation in very specific areas, around the Midlands, Northwest at least. That might be very different in your coastal towns. So I don't think they'll be able to blanket a certain area. It's going to be property specific. And again, that's something that'll be slightly different. But will people see a slight increase in value if they do go through the changes with their serviced accommodation and they have a C5 property by the end of it? I would assume so. I think there will be some capital uplift in the value of those houses too.
Well, you certainly think so, wouldn't you? Particularly if it's in Article 4. It'd be the same sort of concept as C4 HMO in an Article 4 area. It's 9 times out of 10, as long as it's sort of over 5-bed, all en suite, you're going to get commercial valuation. Not that I do commercial valuations myself, nor do I think they're good from a leverage perspective, but obviously people do that and they understand their risk profile and they're happy with that level of risk. And I think Article 4, what people also don't realise, is not just for HMOs. If you want to put an extension on, a dormer, change your windows, anything like that, if it falls under permitted development, if you're in an Article 4 area, you have no permitted development rights at all.
And the HMO stuff's really interesting, because with a HMO, obviously to get a HMO licence, you need to have the correct lending. Now, what the government are calling this is a registration scheme. So they've not called it SA licensing. It's a register. So is the lending going to become a factor or not? I'm not sure. There's areas in Scotland where it isn't, but I really hope it is for the UK. I think that'll make a big difference to everyone doing it correctly.
In England, you mean England, Wales?
That's what I meant. Yeah.
UK includes Scotland and
Scrub
Ireland.
that one for me.
Good stuff. So I think from a sort of business growth perspective, kind of probably keeping it within the sort of service accommodation element, what have been the biggest growing pains for that type of business and for you?
That's a great question. I'll answer it in 2 parts. So firstly, I suppose very SA specific or service accommodation specific, which is that it's unlike a lot of property strategies, and you've got to educate your client if you're offering a management service on what that's like if it's their first time doing it. So for me, I always like working with landlords that have had previous experience, whether it's working with any type of letting agent, and that way they know or realise or appreciate that we're offering them a really good service with what we do. I think a lot of people that get involved in property don't realise that any phone call you generally have once that property's let out is probably going to be a negative one. You don't often get a call saying your tenant's decided to pay you more rent this month or whatever else it might well be. And with serviced accommodation, because it's a trading business, it's not seen as residential income, it's commercial income that you're generating. That commercial income is formed in a very different way. So depending on seasonality, occupancy, your daily rates, length of stay, your operational costs, who the booking has come from, whether it be direct, an online travel agent, an insurance company, that will all impact your cash flow, which creates undulations and variations. So the biggest thing I always say to people looking at starting serviced accommodation is to annualize your income. And I think when you look at any investment annually, it's the right thing to do. I really dislike it when I see people saying I get £90 a week from a HMO room, or probably £150 a week from a HMO room nowadays. How many weeks of the year? What are the maintenance costs associated with it? What are the agent fees that are associated with it? And what's your void periods and things? So that's a big factor in a growing pain for us. Having 2 clients, we're working on behalf of guests and making sure that they get what they want and also what the landlords want as well. And they're often 2 conflicting things. So that's something that's been different for me, coming from a single let or residential style of lettings. I'd say another challenge is really about growing a very noisy business with moving parts and the staffing element of it as well. So you've got many, many different aspects to this business. And I suppose with subcontractors, making sure that they are aligned with your vision for the business, they understand what both customers need, whether it be the guest and the landlord, and putting controls and processes in place so that they are able to deliver what we would call an A-star service for us. But that's taken a long time to achieve, almost training and molding subcontractors and making sure they share some responsibility and some values and some culture that we've tried to promote.
So it's a people element, really.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
Which is a common theme.
You know what? If you asked my business partner, he would probably have different opinions. Obviously, I am generally the people side of things. I'm sure he would sit here and tell you about the bookkeeping element or some of the processes and systems that we have internally. But that's definitely the case from my side.
No, it is a common theme. But obviously, it's an important, vital part to having that engine well oiled by having the right people in the right roles, whether it be subcontractors, full-time members of staff, yourself, VAs, whoever it might be. It all helps to push in the right direction.
It's being jack of all trades, isn't it? As a small business owner, so you are marketing department, sales department, operations, finance, and really you're no expert in any of them. No. You're making it up as you go along. You're trying to take advice from the right people at the right time, and just reducing and limiting the amount of mistakes and errors that you make so that you continue offering a good service. And that's why we've not grown rapidly and blown up overnight. It's been 5 years to kind of get to where we are now. And it's been a turtle approach.
There are often anomalies, those businesses that really do accelerate and accelerate hard. And I think property isn't one of those industries where you haven't reinvented the wheel. It's a service that multiple people are doing, but it's all about obviously doing it better than the next person. Whereas you haven't started the next Facebook or Instagram or whatever it might be. It's all about understanding, right, growth comes from profitability, and profitability comes from growing in the right manner. And I think it's vital for people that are running property service-based businesses to understand that it's a marathon, not a sprint.
And I think when you do see those people sprinting, just from being on social media for the last 8-9 years, you'll watch people pop up. They will display huge amounts of success very, very quickly. And there's been times in the past where I've sat there thinking, what am I missing? What am I doing wrong? And how have these guys managed to get it going so quickly, so well? And I've seen enough of that now to realize that is a ticking time bomb. You can't go from 0 to 10 employees and X amount of properties and have it all ironed out. It generally goes wrong. And we've both seen that numerous times now to realize that.
Front row seats in some cases.
Yeah.
But it's, people over leverage themselves from a perspective of I think being on social media and trying to be perceived in this incredible way. I think that then creates this theme that they need to continue. And if the business isn't doing what they're being perceived to do on social media, then it doesn't matter, because they're just going to either disappear at some point or go bankrupt. And that's often the case, unfortunately. But it's those that are, I suppose, sensible enough to realise that it's not so much about having 50 members of staff. It's more about having one member of staff but making maximum profit.
Yeah,
and that's what we're all in business for at the end of the day. As well as hopefully providing something of value to the world, and putting food on multiple people's table and all that sort of stuff. But without profitability, you're not doing anyone.
It's the lifeblood of it, isn't it? And I think that's a great point. When I started out, the things that I thought were important to me or the things that I wanted aren't the things that I want now, and they're not the things that I take pleasure and enjoyment from. So, one of the things that drives me to want to build this into something that's bigger is that it's about purpose, and having something that's big, exciting, challenging, and all of the things that brings is really what I want to do. So it's not from a position of, if you've got 50 members of staff, it'll be closer to living on a yacht or whatever it might well be. Actually having those team members and appreciating them for the skill sets that they've got, and watching them enjoy turning up to work has become so rewarding for me. And the same for the clients as well, actually. Seeing them have good results as a result of your service is genuinely brilliant. And to be completely transparent, when I was 18, I couldn't have cared less about any of those two things at all.
Yeah. So just loop into that then, that's good. We'll start we'll finish how we started on the whole younger Dan piece. We've got little Dan here, 18-year-old, super eager. We'll always use 3, 'cause 3 is a magic number. What 3 key bits of advice would you give to little Dan? He's here now.
I thought you were going to say three words. I'd have been "you daft Monday" or something like that.
Oh, that's even better. We'll start there.
don't think I can articulate that easily, to be honest. The 3 key bits of advice. For me, when I started, like I say, I tried to go relatively big, proportionately for my age and experience, very quickly. So I didn't have a set strategy. I was doing rent to HMO, which was working really, really well for me. I was doing some consultancy on a lettings business, and the first building that I bought was a office block in Crewe. I JV'd with a builder, and we were looking at converting that to an 8-bed all-en-suite HMO. My responsibility was to find the building and to find the money for the building, and he was going to do the refurb at cost. So he bought it for 120 using investor finance. We were going to convert it at cost for £60,000. And then I've got a commercial valuation on it and split the cash flow 50-50 after that point. On the day we completed on it, the builder called me and said, "Is it definitely ours now?" I said, "Yeah, it is." He said, "Great, I need to speak to you." So I went down to see him and he said, "Listen, the build's gone up a little bit." And I was like, "Okay, how much by?" And he was like 100 grand. And I was like, "Up by 100 grand. So we're now at 160. And just the way that information was given to me, it was a check that we'd completed and it was ours. Then the information was given. And I thought, I can't trust you anymore the way you've told me about that, really. So looked to sell it. But at the time, it was just insanely challenging because I got this building with no planning permission, a load of investor debt attached to it, a business partner that I no longer felt I could trust, and had to find a way of getting out of it. So for me, I would give myself a pat on the back for getting out of that, getting it sold and doing all right out of it. And that's really down to the tenacity and knowing that there's no other option for me. And there's no other option because I'm so scared of failure. You know, I'm petrified of this going wrong. I'm obsessed with making it work. And that's really what I suppose I would encourage in that daft 18-year-old. But again, back to that trust but verify, you know, make sure that the people that you're surrounding yourself with claim they care. Because I think when you're young and you're getting into it, if this is to the younger audience, there'll be so many people out there that, you know, tell you they see something special in you and that you're going to do really well. And actually it's just bollocks. They just kind of want to use you for something or, you know, take a decent fee out of training. I've shelled out loads of money to some really great coaches and mentors and some really crap ones as well. But it would just be about having sensible income streams. So whether it be staying in your job, building up a portfolio of rent to rents or managed clients, whatever it might well be, nice and slowly so that you haven't got an insane amount of pressure to make this work from day dot. And once you've got that experience behind you and you're starting to see some success, that's the time that you start to scale and leverage it. And at the moment we're doing buy-to-let projects, you know, 5 years on after that point of trying to buy an office block. And I couldn't be any more content doing that because I'm still in the stage of building a really solid foundation so that if in 2, 10, 20 years time, that's when I decide to start developing, great. I've got the foundations and the building blocks behind me and the experience.
Absolutely. So I think the key bits I took from that is do your due diligence.
So you can summarize it into 3 articulately for me.
do your due diligence. Don't trust what people say on face value, which also links to due diligence. And thirdly, I think don't try and win quickly.
Huge one.
Try and win over the long term, because that, if you're making decisions today, it should be focused on what that reflects in 5 to 10 years. And then from 5 to 10 years, it's understanding, right, well, what will this decision today create then? And then what decisions can I make then, which will be in a better place, hopefully, to be able to then accelerate quicker? Because the kind of linear for I suppose listening, it kind of goes like that and then it goes like that. And most graphs you see of success and wealth, and you know, if you take Warren Buffett for example, obviously a very extreme version, it took him to compound what he's got. If you look at his linear graph to compound where his net worth is today, it's taken, in comparison, obviously he was a millionaire before he was 26 or whatever, it's something insane like that, but obviously he's an anomaly that we were talking about. But his actual wealth was probably been the last 10 to 15 years where he's made the majority of his net worth.
It's that getting started part, isn't it? And that is such a long, slow drag for ages. And that's because you haven't got really the resources to make it work, whether you've not got the capital or you've not got the marketing or the credibility to go and get your initial few projects and deals over the line. Once you've managed to prove yourself and you leverage and showcase that you've done it well, that's when it can start to snowball, and that's when it really takes off. And you know, the things that you would have dreamed of doing 5 years ago are just day-to-day boring stuff nowadays.
Yeah, absolutely. It's interesting because I also kind of on the young point, I see young people coming into the industry now. Obviously, we were that once, so we can kind of relate to where they're at. And I think I can see the difference between those that are going to be here for the short term and those that are going to be here for the long term. And it's just their approach to, what they're saying, what they're trying to perceive themselves on social media, all these points. And really the ones that I'm looking at today and thinking, you're going to be here for a long time. A lot of their stuff isn't ego driven. It's very much based on the fact that, they want to be successful in business, and they're not playing the I'm young card, or, I've done this whilst I've been 12 years old or still in my mum's womb, like I was dealing sweets and all that sort of stuff. The ones that really, and I think we kind of were like that. We were looking at stuff from a long-term perspective. For you, rent to rent was to replace the income to then create to go into do property development. For me, I was obviously flipping houses, buying HMOs, all that sort of stuff. And it was all about, right, where's that going to leave us in the next 10 years? And I think, you and I have been on social media, but I think we're not the best at it.
I'm not famous, sadly, yet.
Yeah, we're not viral, but I mean, this is probably the most successful thing I've ever done on online anyway. So it's a difficult journey, and I think people have got to look at it from a long term. And as they say, you overestimate what you can do in 12 months and underestimate what you can do in 10 years.
I say it a lot, and it's probably not the best thing to say on record, but if you want to make the most money at a property in a very short space of time, start sourcing rent to SA deals, because the amount of shit that people peddle out doing that is unbelievable. And, I see people coming from courses selling these deals with, above market AST rents, just telling people that at 70% occupancy, they're going to make 1,300 quid a month or wherever they've plucked that figure from. And they are getting rid of them. They are selling these deals to unfortunate investors that believe the hype and want that quick win as well. And I think they're making some hefty sourcing fees. They're not going to be around in 12, 24 months, I'm pretty sure. It's a very short-lived thing. And for me, it's never about that. I don't really see myself having another option other than property and business. I couldn't go back and work for somebody else now. No. Property, I love it and I enjoy it. And because I've promised myself that that's what I'm going to be good at, doesn't matter if it takes me 10 years or 100 years, we'll get there eventually, but it's not doing it in 12 months through selling shit.
No. And that's where people that have got no sustainability, that's what they're doing. And if you I know you take that business model, you improve it, you do it properly, you'll be here for 5 to 10 years rather than 5 to 6 months.
Yeah.
And that's the real difference. So I think that wraps the episode up quite nicely, to be honest.
Good run.
But I mean, this is the place for it, mate. This is the place for it. So if people want to get in touch, how can they go about doing that?
Best place to do it would probably be Facebook or Instagram or LinkedIn. So Dan Cheetham or Daniel Cheetham. And then on Instagram, it's Dan Cheetham Property. So just send me a message on there, and if I can help, I'd love to. Super. Well, thank you very much for coming on today. Thank you for having me on.
It's been a pleasure. And thank you to those at home that have been listening. Again, if you're listening on YouTube, then please subscribe and like. It does help the video. And if you're listening to the audio version, then please leave a review. Good or bad, we'll take it on board and hopefully improve if it is bad. But please try and avoid that. Thank you. We'll hope to see you again, and see you again soon. Bye-bye.